Music, I want to be clear. I wasn't searching for lost civilizations. My research focused on sea level data, geological surveys, the sort of dry, technical material that bores most people to sleep. Coastline regression charts, bathymetric maps of continental shelves, records of how much the ocean has risen since the last ice age, how fast, and what it swallowed along the way. Then I came across something in the sonar data that made me stop. A shape on the ocean floor that doesn't belong there. Go see for yourself. Search for the Yonaguni monument. Pull up the sonar images. Pull up the dive footage. You don't need a geology degree, you just need eyes. What you'll find is a massive stone structure, sitting 25 meters below the Pacific surface, off the southern coast of Yonaguni, Japan's westernmost inhabited island. Flat platforms, right-angled steps, terraces carved at uniform heights. Straight, line channels, walls meeting at corners, so precise you could hang a picture frame on them. The structure stretches over 100 meters across the seabed. Divers have described its features as staircases, drainage systems, ceremonial platforms, and a road leading to a vanishing point in deeper water. The last time any of this was above sea level was roughly 10,000 years ago. Hold on to that number, 10,000 years, because it doesn't just predate the accepted construction timeline. It blows it apart. 10,000 years ago, there was no Sumer, no Egypt, no Indus Valley, no Mesopotamia. No civilization anywhere on Earth that the official timeline recognizes as capable of cutting stone at this scale. According to everything you were taught, every human alive then was a nomadic hunter-gatherer. No agriculture, no permanent settlements, no engineering, no complex social organization to quarry and shape a monument this size. And yet there it sits on the ocean floor, waiting for an explanation. The official explanation came quickly. Too quickly, in my view. The mainstream archaeological establishment looked at Yonaguni and declared it natural. Sandstone fractures along straight lines. Mudstone cleaves at right angles. Tectonic activity produces flat surfaces. The human eye sees patterns where none exist. Case closed. Move along. That raises a simple but crucial question. If the explanation is so simple, why hasn't the case been studied with the rigor it deserves? Here's what bothers me. The declaration of natural origin came before comprehensive study, not after. It preceded it. The structure was categorized before it was fully mapped. The conclusion was reached before the evidence was assembled. And once institutionalized, funding for investigation dried up. You don't fund expeditions to study natural rock. You don't publish papers about geology doing geological things. You don't build careers confirming that a rock is a rock. The dismissal didn't just end the debate. It prevented the very research that might have settled it. But not everyone accepted it. Masaaki Kimura, a marine geologist at the University of the Ryukyus, has spent over 2 decades meticulously mapping Yonaguni. Read his work. Seriously, pull up his surveys. He has documented tool marks on stone surfaces. He identified a triangular depression with symmetrical walls that, he argues, no natural process could produce. He found what appears to be a carved face on one rock section. He measured step heights with uniformity exceeding natural fracturing. He mapped spatial relationships, suggesting deliberate architectural planning. Kimura isn't a YouTuber with a theory. He's a professor with decades of peer-reviewed publication, and the mainstream response hasn't been rebuttal or engagement. It's been silence. His work isn't cited. His evidence isn't directly addressed. His conclusions exist in a professional vacuum. Not because they've been disproven, but because they imply something the standard timeline can't absorb. The silence was deafening. Now, follow this thread, because Yonaguni isn't alone. And here's where the natural formation explanation starts to collapse under its own weight. In waters around Yonaguni and the nearby Ryukyu Islands, divers have documented multiple submerged structures. Not one formation, but many, separated by kilometers at different depths, displaying the same geometric traits: flat surfaces, right angles, step terraces, post holes, channels. Pull up the dive logs. Look at photos from Karama, from Aguni, from Chatten. Individually, each site could be dismissed as geological coincidence, but together, across a wide area, sharing the same construction vocabulary, the coincidence explanation requires more faith than the alternative. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision, not just in Japan. Off western India in the Gulf of Kammat, 2001 sonar surveys detected geometric structures on the seabed at 40 meters. Dredging recovered pottery fragments, carved wood, human teeth. Carbon dating placed organic material at roughly 9,500 years ago, 5,000 years before the Indus Valley civilization, 5,000 years before anything the official timeline says should exist there. Off western Cuba, also in 2001, sonar detected what researchers described as pyramidal structures, rectangular buildings, and a planned urban layout sitting at over 600 meters depth. 600 meters. The last time that seabed was dry, the ice age was still at its peak. The site got media coverage, brief institutional curiosity, then vanished from scientific discourse. No comprehensive follow-up, no published study, nothing. Off Malta, submerged formations appear to extend the megalithic temple complexes already on land. Temples among the oldest freestanding structures on Earth. The submerged portions sit at depths matching sea levels 10,000 years ago, as if the visible temples are only the parts the ocean didn't reach. Off Greece, off Egypt, off Okinawa, off India's southeastern coast, where fishermen have reported stone structures in shallow water for generations. Wherever anyone has bothered to point a sonar array or send a diver down to a submerged coastline that was above water during the Ice Age, they find anomalies, geometric shapes, right angles, patterns nature can produce individually, but that cluster with a consistency no geological model predicts. Count the sites. Seriously, make a list. Japan, India, Cuba, Malta, Greece, Egypt. Different oceans, different continents, different geology. Same geometric anomalies. Same depths corresponding to the same submersion window. Same official response. Natural formation. Insufficient evidence. Not worth investigating. Move along. As if following instructions they didn't fully understand. Now step back and ask the connecting question. Where did people live 10,000 years ago? The official answer: inland, river valleys, fertile plains, places where archaeologists have looked because those places are above water and accessible to people with shovels, brushes, and institutional funding. The entire timeline of human civilization, every date, milestone, and textbook first, was built from dry land evidence. But think where humans actually concentrate. Think where every major city sits today: coastlines, river mouths, harbors, deltas, edges where fresh water meets salt. This isn't modern behavior. It's primate behavior. Species deep. Humans always cluster at the water's edge, because that's where resources converge: of fish, shellfish, fresh water, trade routes, transport. The coast is where humans go, always have, and 10,000 years ago, the coast was somewhere else. Somewhere now 20, 40, 60, 100 meters underwater. The Ice Age locked so much water in glaciers that sea levels were over 100 meters lower. Coastlines extended kilometers beyond their current positions. The continental shelves, now shallow seabed, were dry, habitable land, and if humans behaved 10,000 years ago, as they have for the rest of recorded history, the densest populations lived there. The deeper I went, the more the absence of pre-Ice Age civilization started to look not like evidence it never existed, but like evidence of where it did exist. On now submerged coastlines and seabed settlements around harbors now underwater. Formations sonar picks up, geologists dismiss as natural, and nobody funds research to determine which explanation is true. We've searched 30% of Earth's surface and declared the search complete. Now pull up one more thing, a map of flood myths. Not one culture's flood story. All of them. Plot them geographically. The Epic of Gilgamesh from Mesopotamia, Genesis from the Hebrew tradition, the Matsya Purana from Hindu scripture, the Deucalion myth from Greece, the Denyuwa stories from China, Aboriginal Australian stories of rising seas swallowing land, indigenous North American traditions of a great inundation, South American, Pacific Island African accounts, every inhabited continent, every major tradition, stories of a flood that destroyed an earlier world and forced humanity to begin again. We treat these as myths, primitive attempts to explain rainfall and river flooding, allegories for spiritual transformation. Anything but what they might actually be, testimony. Oral history transmitted across hundreds of generations with the same fidelity indigenous Australians used to preserve accurate descriptions of coastlines underwater for 8,000 years. A fidelity scientifically verified. The flood myths aren't metaphor. The sea level data is measured fact. Between 15,000 and 7,000 years ago, the ocean rose over 100 meters. It swallowed millions of square kilometers of inhabited coastline. It destroyed every coastal settlement, harbor, and monument built overlooking the sea. And the survivors, the people who retreated inland as waters rose, generation after generation, watching the ocean consume the world their grandparents knew. What would they tell their children? What would those children tell theirs? What story would survive 1,000 retellings across 10,000 years? A story about a flood that drowned everything. The official explanation collapses here, because you can't simultaneously accept the undisputed sea level data and maintain that no significant human construction existed on coastlines above water for tens of thousands of years. Either humans didn't live on Ice Age coastlines, contradicting everything we know about settlement patterns, or they did, and everything they built is now underwater. Those are the only two options. And the second means the timeline of civilization isn't wrong, because it overestimates human capability. It's wrong because it only looked where evidence hadn't been drowned. Go back to Yonaguni. Look at the sonar data again. Those right angles, uniform steps, flat platforms extending across the seabed in a geometry nature can theoretically produce. But that appears site after site, ocean after ocean, with a consistency theory alone can't explain. Look and ask yourself, is the honest scientific response natural formation? Case closed. Or is it? We don't know, and we should find out. Because here's what I keep coming back to. We have the technology. Side scan sonar, LIDAR bathymetry, remotely operated submersibles, diving gear that can put trained archaeologists on submerged sites for hours. We have every tool needed for a comprehensive survey of the world's submerged coastlines. And we haven't done it. Not because it's impossible, because it's expensive, because archaeology's institutional framework was built for dry land and never restructured for a planet that's 70% water. Because careers, funding, and publications flow through a system that's already decided when and where civilization began. A system with no incentive to look where the answer might differ. The deeper I went, the more the ocean started to look like the largest unexcavated archaeological site on Earth. Not the deep ocean, the shallow shelves, the drowned coastlines, the places where temples would be if they existed before the timeline says they should. And at Yonaguni, 25 meters down, something sits in dark water with right angles, uniform steps, and flat platforms extending across the seabed like the foundation of a building swallowed by the ocean before history began. something a marine geologist has spent his career documenting, and the archaeological establishment has spent the same career ignoring. I'm not telling you there was an advanced global civilization before the Ice Age. I'm telling you there's a structure on the ocean floor nobody can explain, surrounded by similar structures across multiple oceans that nobody has funded research to investigate. In waters that covered coastlines, where humans almost certainly lived during a catastrophic sea level rise, every culture on Earth remembers as a flood that destroyed the world. I'm telling you the ocean floor hasn't been searched. And I'm asking why not? What's down there we're not supposed to find? What timeline would have to be rewritten? What textbooks recalled? What institutions would have to admit they built an entire chronology of human civilization on the 30% of Earth's surface that happened to stay dry? Next time you stand at the ocean's edge, look out at the water and ask yourself what's underneath it. Not fish, not sand, not geology doing geological things. What structures? What foundations? What evidence of who we were before the flood that every civilization remembers, but no institution investigates? Once you see it, you can't unsee it.